So we are recapping Family Matters Season 2, Episode 23, Skip to My Lieu. I saw the wordplay they did there because skip to my Lieu, isn't that like a skipping rocks on the water kind of phrase, or does that mean something else?
It's a children's song. It's skipping rocks on the water. It's a move in checkers. Like, it's got a lot of things it goes by.
Okay. And in this case, skip to my Lieu. Lieu is spelled Lieu, short for Lieutenant Murtaugh, who plays a big part in this episode. It originally aired, fittingly enough, April Fool's Day, 1991, April 1st. Charlene Seeger wrote this episode, but now this person goes by a different name. I totally forgot. Director, once again, Rich Carell, and we have guest starring Sean Harrison as Waldo Geraldo Faldo and Barry Jenner as Lieutenant Murtaugh. Our Hulu summary is Steve Urkel gives Laura Winslow a bracelet and Lieutenant Murtaugh goes on a date with Rachel. Both are bluntly spurned, leaving Urkel consoling Lieutenant Murtaugh. So you can kind of see how it ends based on our summary, but we'll still give you the deets anyway. I think that's it. Spurned? Is that the first time you've heard that word, Andrew?
No, I've heard it millions of times.
Okay. I feel like I need to go back to school or like watch some kind of hooked on phonics program because every day it seems like Family Matters is teaching me a word that I feel like I should know. Yeah. It's a
You
lot.
guys have to read a lot of Shakespeare in English.
We did. So I performed Shakespeare in acting classes, and I think there were some occasions where we read Shakespeare in English class, but I prominently remember performing Shakespeare back in high school classes for acting.
Taming of the Shrew has spurned in it so many times. You may have heard the word and just never even picked it up.
All right. Well, there you go. Good to know. All right. We get into our cold open where what the hell is happening? Oh, it's a Steve and Laura thing. Oh, yeah. So I think the whole point of the cold open, it starts with Steve and Laura, the usual. Laura doesn't want to be bothered with Steve, but Steve is really there to get Eddie's attention. Of course, Eddie doesn't want to be bothered with him. What are your thoughts as how they opened the show this episode?
I thought the opening was really good. I know Eddie and why am I going to say his name? Darius McQuarrie, who plays Eddie, is in a new movie. If y'all want to check it out, I have not watched the movie, but I saw the trailer for it. It's called Greenwood, and he's playing one of the people in Black Wall Street before the Tulsa Massacre.
Yeah.
If you want to check it out, it looks good. But Eddie, why am I speaking about Eddie? And this is Laura and Steve. Wow, I'm thrown off.
No, it's okay because Eddie does eventually come into this cold open. So it really
does. But Laura and Steve have fun in the beginning of this.
They do. I think Laura is wearing this multicultural Africanish top. I think she also wore that at the end of the Fight the Good Fight episode. Is that the same top?
Yes, that's the same ethnic top. They were like, throw her in there.
We're gonna call it the ethnic top, the ethnic cleansing top. That's a negative term, isn't it? Ethnic cleansing.
Of course it is.
I'm so sorry. Ethnic dirtying, the ethnic dirtying top. We want the shirt filled to the brim with ethnic stuff. We want the ethnic cleansed from it.
Yes, we do not want to walk around in a blank t-shirt.
Okay. All right. Oh my God, I'm out of my mind right now. All right. Steve coming at Laura with these wonderful pickup lines like, wait up, my speed demon egg. Where's the fire? Except for the one for you blazing in my heart. I tell you, man, these writers, they just know how to like write some creative shit for Steve to say to Laura.
They're like, make him romantic and Shakespearean, but weird.
Yeah, they make it all work. My appetizer comes in with this wonderfully written exchange between Laura and Steve. Sometimes you just get the best snappy lines when it comes to Laura having to put Steve in his place. Like, for instance, look, Steve, I got to go meet Maxine at the mall. I don't have time to reject you. Like, I don't know, just something about that, like that wit, that zazz, that bluntness. It's great, great writing. And then Steve comes back with, actually, I was here to see Edo. And then Laura, without a beat, is like, well, darn, I wasted a good excuse.
Laura killed that line. Steve and Laura are getting their energy. This episode, they had great interaction.
Yeah, I mean, we could say over and over again about the immorality of their relationship, but it also provides great comedy, like, oh, this kid who stalks after this girl and this girl doesn't want anything to do with him. And This kid just has all these different creative, wordy ways to try to win this girl's heart. It's not working, so it just brings about a lot of comedy. So true to Steve's lack of reading the room when it comes to his Laura obsession, he has a warped version of the she loves me not flower petal picking, because of course instead Steve is like, she loves me, she loves me, she loves me. Like, there's no other option.
I love that they chose a lily that is typically a funeral flower to do the joke. That was what sent me. I was like, oh, this is hilarious.
I don't know my flowers at all. I just thought like, oh, that looks like any old flower that I would see in a beautiful field. But you're saying that that was like a hidden metaphor of like, you know, Steve being optimistic about something that is clearly dead.
Wow, you made me sound smart. Thank you.
Well, you are smart. You're very intelligent. In this cold open, all I was thinking, we're not even done with season 2 yet. I can already hear the puberty in Jalil's voice. I heard a slight deep register there. So we're gonna see how that develops as we get into if we get into season 3.
If we get there, we're gonna hear some squeaks because he's starting to change.
And that makes me cringe because I guess I just relate it to me and maybe yourself. Just I think any guy who's in a no, you didn't go through those like weird voice.
I was so jealous. I was so jealous. My voice has been the same since I was young.
So are like, do you like that? Do you not like that?
I hate it. My voice got me jumped all the time. I hated my voice. Like, I was so jealous of everybody who got to go through puberty and their voices got all deep. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Well, you and Jaleel have something in common because thanks to his Urkel character that he played for 9 fucking years, his voice stayed the same.
Right? One thing with Steve Urkel where I'm like, I see you.
Yeah. Like season 2 and 3 is like when you hear the voice starting to crack, like, all right, man, you're growing up. But then Jaleel just like he kept on stressing that high-pitched nasal nerdery, and his vocal cords was just like they were just being choked to death, and they could just never return from that.
Jaleel, you still sound hot. We'll take that for you.
All right, so Eddie comes downstairs in a frustrated hurry in this cold open because Steve is in his way. And did you notice how Eddie's sleeves, like they're so tight and rolled up, and you know he's trying to show off muscle, but like he's that teenager boy that clearly does not have any muscle to show off. It's just like these lanky, skinny arms.
I feel like he's watched Terminator or something, because whenever I see a guy roll up their t-shirt sleeve, I'm like, what are you doing? What is the message you're trying to send here?
Yeah, Eddie, because, yeah, you look every bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, my God. Mr. Universe. Like, Mr. Universe and Eddie Winslow, same deal. Same body.
There, Eddie Winslow was like, okay, I'll show off these guns. I'm going to make sure that you remember me on screen today.
Yeah. And I'm lightly chuckling at how sad this line is, even though we've heard many versions of it before, when Eddie was telling Steve that he cannot be seen in public with him, and Steve was like, well, that's an irony. My father told me the same thing.
I laughed.
Sad home life, but somehow you make it so funny, Urkel.
It was so good. That was the joke of that scene for me, where I rewound it and laughed a couple of times.
I love that. Steve wants the name of the jewelry person Eddie went to for the ID bracelet he got for his girlfriend, Jolene. Eddie is understandably confused. He was like, why? Steve genuinely tells Eddie that him and Laura are at the jewelry stage of their relationship that only exists to him, of course. And Eddie jokingly says that that would make sense since Laura has had a ring in Steve's nose all this time. Now, had a question about that ring in the nose line. One, I don't get it, because I'm trying to look up the saying on the internet, and all it tells me is a ring in the nose is a fashion statement or a form of cultural identity. So the internet is taking it literally, but have you heard the phrase ring in the nose as a way of like saying that someone's been rejected?
I've never heard it in the form of rejected, but I've heard people say like, oh, you got a ring in the nose, like when they would pierce a bull's nose to control it.
Okay, so maybe that's what it means. Huh.
Possibly. I mean, this would be really like good for Eddie to hit us with such a cultural line.
Yeah. And another example of the internet and Family Matters being completely different. An ID bracelet. I mean, I guess in romantic terms, that's the equivalent of a promise ring, because I look up ID bracelet on the internet and it just says, oh, that's a bracelet where you get medical information in case you have emergency medical conditions. And I'm like, okay, I don't know if these teenagers are having that kind of ID bracelet.
So the ID bracelet was like big in fashion back in the 90s. And it's essentially a nameplate with like a Cuban link chain. And some people really love them. Now, if you see them today, they sell them, the metal ones, for medical reasons because people put their medical information on them. But the ID bracelet is what it was called. And something else like a nameplate bracelet or something. I've seen them, but Tiffany's was the biggest seller of them.
So it started out as something that young people wear as a fashion trend, and then it just evolved into something that's like mostly identified now as an old people thing.
Yeah, because nobody really wears them anymore. Like more people are like focused on the link itself as opposed to this big hunk of metal that has like something written on it. But then for medical reasons, they saw like this is good. Like if you know anybody who's epileptic, some epileptic people wear them because they don't know if they're going to go into a seizure. And instead of some paper bracelet that could get destroyed, you've got a metal thing with all your medical information on it.
Wow. Well, I love that. I love that something that was just a trend is now being used as a helpful thing for people's health. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So Eddie eventually exits, and I don't quite know how I feel about this moment. I really want to hear your thoughts on this. When Steve was enthusiastically like doing these physical steps to indicate the ascending steps of his and Laura's imaginary relationship, like he was like, step 1, ID bracelet. Step 2, proposal. Step 3, wedding. Step 4, wedding night. And then he takes a moment to find out what that could mean. And then he's just like, oh, like he just fades to the floor. Well, now let me dispute that wedding night stereotype, because as someone who was married, your wedding day is the busiest fucking thing ever. And by the end of the night, the last thing you're thinking about is doing any physical action. Like you just want to go the fuck to bed. My wife and we had a honeymoon to wake up for the next morning. So we just were not all about the wedding night sex stuff. But also, I don't know if you were feeling as a little bit weird as I was, that like these adult writers were writing that specific kind of joke for someone as young as Jaleel at the time. Maybe I'm just like overthinking it, but I was just like, no, yeah, y'all are kiddies.
Of all the things that have been pervy to come out of Steve's mouth, I thought this was the most tame thing in the world. I laughed my butt off when he was doing that walk. I was like, this is freaking hilarious. And I had to literally rewind it because I wasn't listening to what he was saying. I was just laughing at the walk. And then I'm like, okay, this is a good joke.
Yeah. Jaleel does know how to do physical comedy choices very well. So I could see why you would like those steps. Anything else for the cold open?
That is it.
Awesome. We get into scene 1 in the living room. This is where Lieutenant Murtaugh just busts in unannounced, and he is going to make clear what he wants from Carl. And Carl gets that feeling like, oh God, if I don't follow through with this, I'm going to get fired. What were your thoughts about this living room scene?
I love the beginning of the scene. Carl is watching a sport, and in the sport, they're doing something. But Carl reacts and is so happy that he starts throwing this popcorn all over the living room. And one, me, I would be bothered. But 2, it was hilarious watching him do it.
I was actually thinking about you because I know that, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you like to have a clean place, right? A clean residence as much as possible.
Yes, 100%. That flowers on the bed crap for Valentine's Day, I will walk in the room and say, who is cleaning this trash up off of my bed?
Now, I am a messy guy, not intentionally. I just am an unawareingly messy guy. And my wife is, she has to remind me that, like, please, Jonathan, clean your syrup up on the counter. But even like, when I was looking at Carl, like, shaking in anticipation, we eventually found out he was watching a Chicago Bulls game. So it was basketball. So he's watching the Chicago Bulls game on TV. He's in anticipation. Some big moment's going to happen. He's glued to his seat. He's eating the popcorn. And then once, I guess, Michael Jordan makes the ultimate shot, Carl is like, oh my God. And he just throws the popcorn in the air. I was confused by that choice because I was just automatically thinking of Harriet. I'm like, oh no, poor Harriet is going to just come in and just going to see a bunch of popcorn just in a mess on the floor. Carl could have just easily put the popcorn bowl aside and then a rah, rah, rah celebration move with his fists or something. But no, I've never celebrated by just randomly throwing food in the air.
It was the weirdest thing. Like, he actively picked it up and threw it. I'm like, you could have just stood up and it could have flew off your lap. That I can understand. But you're like picking it up and purposely throwing it into the couch cushions. We are getting a divorce as soon as I get home. It's over.
Yeah, Carl is that straight married man that I am, admittingly. So we got some work to do. A dessert coming in right now. My God, I love how Harriet is not taking Carl's 19 wife bullshit when Carl was hearing the doorbell and yelled to Harriet in the kitchen, Harriet, doorbell. And then Harriet, without a beat, she just pops out from the kitchen swinging door and was like, okay, thank you, Carl. Can't wait to have you tell me who it is when you open the door. And then just goes back in the kitchen. I'm like, yes. Tell him, tell him, Harriet.
Harriet gave me a gem. That is also my dessert. Because that is a pet peeve of mine. My parents used to do that all the time.
Like when you were living there or when you were not living there anymore?
When I was living there, they'd be like, hey, somebody's at the door. I'm like, I don't care. Why are you telling me? I'm upstairs.
It's your house, guys. You're the one paying the bills. Like, you open the door. What do I have to do? I mean, this could be somebody who's a kidnapper or a pedophile or something. You open the door.
I never understood why parents would tell their kids that. Like, a pedophile is just going to ring the door and snatch you as soon as you open.
Hey, there's nothing like a polite pedophile. Like, the pedophile part of it, fuck you. But if you're a polite pedophile, okay, maybe.
Still fuck you. Burn in hell. Burn in hell.
But maybe you could sit down and have a conversation and maybe change their ways if they're polite.
Get a bullet to the face, burn in hell. There's no redeeming those people.
Oh my God. It's funny because, like, my wife, Tony, she's like the same kind of person. Like, she'd be the type of person where it's like, you know, let's say if on my dating app, like, oh, I murdered somebody, will you still accept me? And she's like, oh, but if I say it's a pedophile, she's like, oh yeah, okay, that's a pass. I get that.
There you go, like, justifiable. Now we have to have questions about you.
Will you murder non-pedophiles? Oh my God. Anyway, so we know, I already knew that Lieutenant Murtaugh would be the one at the door, and I even heard little claps from the studio audience as Murtaugh came in. So maybe Barry Jenner is already getting some love as the character.
People love him. He got a little entrance.
Yes. And I knew Murtaugh was a clueless, dumb man, but my God, so clueless and dumb that he just barges into Carl's home uninvited. I mean, Carl doesn't even have a chance to say, like, oh, hey, come in. Like, he just comes in and he's just so wrapped up into whatever is in his mind that he's not aware of how engaged Carl is to the Chicago Bulls game. And Lieutenant Murtaugh just turns off the TV and abruptly is just like, I hate basketball, because he just has to get to what's on his mind. Unfair boss privilege right here. I mean, Carl is not even on company time right now. I wonder, Andrew, and if you're in Carl's position and this is a job that really means a lot to you and your boss just barges in, not on company time, and you like, would you feel like you have to cater to the whims, or would you just say whatever you needed to say to get them the fuck out?
You would have never made it in the door, ever. As soon as I see you at my door, am I getting paid right now? Why are you here?
Right.
And so I would have been like, no, but if you made it in my house, the first words out of my mouth are, why are you here and what do you want and how much am I getting paid?
Exactly. Because that's the relationship that we have. Where's my $27.50 an hour to listen to your problems?
Yes, we are not friends. We're here and you're here. That means HR should be notified. So what are we doing?
I mean, honestly, HR should be there to witness the conversation to make sure that no boundaries are being violated.
Yeah.
Even though they clearly are by the fact that you're barging in, talking about things that are not work related.
Very true. I mean, Murtaugh is behaving the way a police officer behaves. Police officers will not ask permission all the time to enter your home. They just think they can barge in.
Yeah. You have a search warrant? No, I'm a police officer. Let me in.
That's exactly it.
Lordy Lord. All right, so we're getting a call back to the Taking Credit episode when Carl and Murtaugh were on that stakeout. Murtaugh is delighting himself with the rumor that he himself started around the office of him being promoted to captain. Carl is joining in on the joy, like, oh yeah, like that's just like when we started the rumor about me being promoted to lieutenant. And then remember, Murtaugh was just like, can it, Winslow? Nobody likes a gossip.
I love when he said scuttlebutt. I don't like you scuttlebutting around. I screamed.
I did not catch that. It's been a while since I've heard that word. So scuttlebutting is another fancy way of saying gossiping?
I screamed when he said that. I was like, Murtaugh, you are my hero. This is how it should be.
Yeah. So a very funny delivery from Murtaugh, but also in the back of my mind, because I love Carl so much, I was like, Murtaugh, you better shut the fuck up. Because I remember what happened in that Taking Credit episode. Carl almost getting hit with bullets during that stakeout. And what did you do, Murtaugh? You're like, hey, you want some eggplant parmesan? Come on now.
He's a terrible cop, but he lives up to his role. He is the perfect example of a cop.
He owns it.
He's like, I'm blue. Just deal with that.
Yeah. Rachel is coming home in workout clothes. So I guess she's coming home from a jog. And oh my gosh, she's bringing me back. While she was on this jog, she had that portable radio with the long ass antenna that you stretch out. Did you have one of those? Because I actually did have something that was similar to that back in the day.
He had a TV. It was a portable TV. I was like, wow, I haven't seen one of those in a while.
I did not have one of those. I had a radio version of that. But so did you have a portable TV?
I had one that my dad gave me, and it lasted a day. And to fix it, it was more than it would cost to buy a new one.
Now, did it require regular batteries?
Batteries are what they mostly had. They were D batteries.
Gotcha. Now, was it just a bad product, or was it you were just watching TV all the time?
No, I broke it.
Oh, God. How did you break it?
I think I threw it off the roof or something. I broke it. Yeah.
Like in frustration or a mistake?
For fun?
All right. How were you a teenager?
No. John, I'm not that old.
I know. Yeah, I think by the time you were a teenager, those TVs were out of fashion.
Yeah, I'm a mini board now.
So, like, were you in your single digits?
Probably. I just remember my dad telling me about this story a bunch of times because I always asked for one, and he would always tell me, you had one and you broke it, Andrew.
Wow. So just one day you just didn't give a fuck about it, and you were like, hey, I wonder what would happen if it just, like, fell off the roof.
That could be it. That could be the thing.
All right. Okay. So Rachel's coming in excited with her portable TV, and she's like to Carl, oh my God, Carl, did you see that fucking awesome shot that Michael Jordan made? And Carl has this tense, uncomfortable smile when he realizes he just missed it because of Lieutenant Murtaugh. He was like, I missed it.
And the way he looked like he was going to choke him.
I mean, look, I'm just imagining because we've all, yeah, right? Like, and he should have choked Lieutenant Murtaugh, right? Because, Lieutenant Murtaugh apparently has a steel plate in his head. He probably wouldn't have felt it. Right? Because that's what happens when you have a steel plate in your head. You just don't feel pain in your neck.
That's another problem. Murtaugh, they did your surgery bad.
Yeah. So I'm just imagining, like, because we've heard all the shit about, like, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, his iconic time with the Chicago Bulls. So 1991, I mean, that was like the year of his first championship. So I can only imagine, like, and with Family Matters taking place in Chicago, that for Carl, it was like, I missed my baby being born. Like, that was the equivalent of it.
Yes, put some respect on his name. He did a Space Jam, okay?
He did. He absolutely did. Okay, so after that moment, Murtaugh, going back in credit episode, we remember that Murtaugh showed interest in Rachel, and it's coming back. Murtaugh's not very subtle about, those creepy romantic interest looks. He's got those eyes, those bedroom eyes towards Rachel, and Rachel is clearly uncomfortable and maneuvering her way around Murtaugh and Carl to get to the kitchen. So that will let you know that I think what we found I think what we were suspicious of, like in that Taking Credit episode, which was like, would Murtaugh and Rachel be a good match? We have been confirmed that they're not going to be.
It has been confirmed, and oh my God, when she squeezed around him, I was laughing the whole time because I'm like, Murtaugh just does not care. He's like, I'm going to stare at you awkwardly, and you're going to have to get around me your own way.
Right. Yeah, he doesn't have that much experience with women, as it turns out. He's very dedicated to his work. So Murtaugh says in his nervous lover boy way, Rachel is remarkably pretty. And I laughed out loud when Carl took a moment to register what's happening. And then he was just like, no, because he knew just, fuck, my boss likes my sister-in-law. And if I want to keep my job, I'm going to have to set this up. And I really don't want to. Oh, no.
Carl's reaction was priceless.
It was great. Reginald VelJohnson, you are the GOAT along with Michael Jordan. Whereas Michael Jordan is the GOAT of basketball, Reginald just knows how to do family comedy. It's great.
He does so good. This was really a shining episode for him.
It was. He's one of the few highlights that I will mention in the Delicious Star rating. And this uncomfortable point, is proved further when Murtaugh intimidatingly asked Carl, you don't agree? And in reference to Murtaugh saying that Rachel is pretty and Carl not really saying anything about that. And yeah, sure, it's a casual thing to brag about how good looking your sister-in-law is, right?
Oh, it's so weird. It's like, wait, you do realize that that's his sister-in-law? You want him to say she's hot in his house and his wife is hot?
Yeah, Murtaugh just has no awareness of what's socially acceptable, but we digress. So Carl nervously agrees with Murtaugh, of course, like, no, sir. It's just, I mean, I agree with you, but it's just and then Carl has to realize it. No, like, he just knows that this is not going to be an easy situation to get out of.
Of course, he'll realize, you could see it on his face. He's like, damn it. This is what I wanted to avoid this whole time.
Were you like me? Were you thinking that this would be like another version of Rachel's First Date, but except much worse because we have all the problematic shit about this coming from Carl's boss?
Oh my God, I thought it was. We're going to get into it in my rating because I thought we were going to have a Rachel's first date experience.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel's first date, that's tame by comparison because that was just simply Carl and Harriet. They want their alone time. They are tired of Rachel being the third wheel. So Carl, like, aggressively tries to set Rachel up with Alan. That was it. In this case, it's like, oh, God, this is like an HR thing. This could be a serious lawsuit thing. Like, your boss, Carl, really wants to get with your sister-in-law, and he is framing it in a way where your job is on the line if this doesn't happen. In 1991, that's okay, but in 2025, woo!
2025? Quid pro quo is fine.
Okay, really? Oh my God.
Look, not to get political, it's happening in the government. That's all I'm going to say. The mayor of my state, well, the governor of New York City, where I live close to, is a part of that. So.
All right. Yeah. You have anything else for scene 1?
That is it.
How about scene 2 as we go into the kitchen and Carl has to break the news to Rachel about wanting to set her up with Murtaugh. What were your thoughts on that?
I have never seen a comedy do this, like a sitcom, and I love it. When Carl walks to the kitchen and is laughing, I started laughing and I could not stop. And no jokes are told. He's just laughing. And I was like, this is brilliant that they did this.
Absolutely. It's my dessert. I mean, Harriet, Rachel, Mama Winslow making whatever food they're making in the kitchen counter, and then Carl coming in with his nervous fit of laughter, and the same kind of laughter that we've heard before, that like I can tell that he is both finding this situation absurd, but he also thinks, if I can find some comedy in this, maybe that'll ease me into convincing Rachel that this is worth pursuing.
Carl is devious. He is diabolical. He knew what he was going in to ask, and he thought, let me make it very comedic, and she will say yes, super easy. Carl, you are evil.
Yes, he is. So in the fit of laughter that Carl has, he does tell Rachel that, like, hey, Murtaugh likes you and wants to go on a date with you. And the ladies all break into a fit of laughter because they think Carl is joking. And Carl was like, what's funny is that he is serious. And then the ladies just stopped laughing. And I love that transition that Carl has from like to just having that nervous cough. Boy,
it gave me super Homer Simpson. And I screamed. Rachel Johnson is a genius.
He really is. God, I love him so much. Yeah, Rachel walks up to Carl, and her face, she is not playing around. She's like, say what? I'm gonna be going on a date with who?
I was waiting for her to like pull Carl's ear and be like, what did you tell him? Did you tell him I'm not interested?
I hope so, Carl. But he didn't do that. Did you pick up on this continuity issue? We see a close-up of Carl and Rachel, and at that close-up shot, Rachel's got her arms folded, but then when we transition to a wider shot with all the adults in the room, Rachel's arms are at their sides as if she never folded them.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah. I mean, I know we've talked about like moments like that where Family Matters just doesn't have that continuity thing lined up. Like I guess there were multiple takes of this particular scene and they just didn't like line it up together. But that's just a little thing that I noticed.
Hey, you know what? Family Matters is doing it. They're trying. It's better than leaving something in the scene that shouldn't have been there.
Mm-hmm. And then we get to how very 1991 this episode is. Carl is being very seriously upfront with Rachel about Lieutenant Murtaugh being his boss, and there is a promotion he could get if Rachel goes out with Murtaugh. Rachel literally says, well, I don't know. Not, fuck you, Carl, I'm not interested. Like, figure this out yourself. I don't know. Because in 1991, women are living in men's world and are there to please men. Mama Winslow and Harriet, I mean, they join in. They are like, oh, come on, Rachel, why not? It gives you a chance to get out of the house. Now, I'm wondering about your thoughts about all this. I mean, I was thinking like if there's something in it for Rachel, okay, that's one thing. That's a whole negotiation you can make amongst yourselves, whatever. What's in it for Rachel? Is there anything?
There is nothing in it for Rachel because Rachel gets kicked out of the house by like season 4. It's like growing. This was not worth the sacrifice. The only thing that I can see is I'm like, okay, I can see back then and now Carl's life would probably be put in danger if he offended a commanding sergeant. Okay. Carl, what is this with you renting out your family members to other people? Because you did this to Laura. Like, what are you doing?
Wait, what? Remind me what he did to Laura
The one episode where Laura had to fit the bill for Eddie promising a date to Steve.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. I can't remember if that was season 1 or this season 2, but yeah, Carl, your family, they're not prostitutes. Like, be respectful. They're human beings, please.
Yes, Carl.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, and I like how you like really pronounce his name. Yes, Carl. Like that's the pronunciation that you give when you want to give that sass that he needs.
Yes, so he needs to know we're talking to him, not a car. It's you.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, nothing in it for Rachel. Carl just wants to get ahead at the office, and Carl is just relying on Rachel to, do a family member a favor, and instead of anybody reporting this to a higher superior. It's 1991. Rachel's like, all right, fine. You give me a roof under my head, Carl. I guess I'll do this favor for you. So I will just have to accept, Andrew, that this is the way it is and hold my tongue, because it's very easy to be like, this is problematic, but this was 1991.
Yes. This was 1991 before people learned morals.
And the funny thing is that, like, Carl was preaching about, like, I remember, like, that episode with Eddie. I can't remember. It was maybe in season 1 around the time of Urkel's introduction, where he was like, Eddie, you got to understand, there's a new modern type of man where it's okay to have sensitive feelings and be more considerate to women. And then you have stuff like this where women have to cater to men's needs in order for men to succeed to their goals.
Yes, it is so convenient how respect for women and being a modern man flies out the window when it comes to a man's career.
Rachel's Place in scene 3. When was the last fucking time we were at Rachel's Place?
We have not been at Rachel's Place in forever. And when I saw the outside of it, I was like, the building says burgers and fries. Or it says burgers and ice cream. So that I went back to last episode or whatever episode it was when she's like, I've got the bachata, whatever that stuff was. And it's like, how in the hell did you make that in this restaurant, Rachel? Your sign says you are for kids.
Yeah. So wait, do we not see the name of Rachel's Place? Like, literally, do we don't see the title outside in that exterior shot anymore?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay.
Like it says burgers and ice cream.
Okay. I thought you meant like the title outside the restaurant just said burgers and ice cream. Okay. All right. Makes sense. Okay. This is where Steve is going on the down low, getting that illegally purchased ID bracelet from a certain reoccurring character that we love so much. What do you think about this scene?
This scene has one of my desserts in it.
Yeah.
The funniest joke of the episode when Waldo is walking in and talks to Steve and says, do you know my motto? I screamed because Waldo doesn't know it.
Yep. I think it was, do you know my motto? And Steve's like, no. And Waldo was like, oh, damn, I was hoping you'd remember it.
I screamed. I was on the line. I'm like, this is the Waldo I've been waiting for. This is the Eddie I've been waiting for.
Yes. So first off, Steve is using the thickest, most suctiony vacuum ever to vacuum the restaurant floor at Rachel's Place. I was like, God damn, what the, like, that's the kind of vacuum that you would use to like if there's like a building that's just being built and there's like a lot of dust and debris, whatever. But like in an already formed restaurant during the workday when there's customers around, why are you using that dirty ultra suctiony contraption?
That is the floor buffer.
So is that normal for restaurants? Like during the, like, is that, look, it scared the fuck out of me. I was like, what is?
I'm laughing because now I feel old because you don't see those anymore. And it was really meant for linoleum floors when the linoleum was like a big thing in restaurants to polish it. So I'm used to seeing them, but this just is funny to me.
I know. I'm just like, what is that big suctiony vacuum thingy? A floor buffer. There you go. Is that floor linoleum? Is that the correct? Okay. I just want to make sure that we're getting that accurate. He was singing that Doodah song to himself for the umpteenth fucking time. He's really obsessed with that song. And of course, he loses control of the floor buffer, and it ends up making a waiter trip, which then transfers to like a table full of customers, getting their table knocked over. The customers are on the floor. The food's on the floor. It's just mayhem. And then Steve wraps it up with just that nervous pointing of the finger to the madness that he caused. Did I do that? Huge audience laughter. And I felt like Kanan Thompson in the first episode of Kenan and Kel when he was watching an episode of Family Matters and Steve Urkel did that moment and Kanan was like, yeah, of course you did that. Like, I'm just at this point where I'm like, okay. Because like right now we think of sitcom catchphrases as cheesy, but back then, like, just to think that every time Steve did that, the audience enjoyed it. I hate that phrase already.
I am going to go watch Kenan and Kel. I don't remember this moment, and now I have to see it.
Yeah,
Oh
it's the pilot episode of Kenan and Kel. Kanan's character, Kenan Rockmore. There was a scene in the living room of his house, and it just opens with him just casually watching Family Matters. And keep in mind, Kenan and Kel came out in 1996. So by then, Family Matters was like probably beyond Jump the Shark. Jaleel was very grown up. Urkel, it was time to go, but he was still doing it. So I think it was like speaking for a lot of people when he was just like, yeah, of course you did, you fucking stupid hoe.
Nobody liked Family Matters then. It was all about Nick and all that.
Yeah. I mean, think of all the hip shit that came out then. Kenan and Kel, Moesha. I think Living Single was on its last year or two, but there was just so many more hipper black shows around that time that you looked at Family Matters and it was just like, really? We're still doing the pants hiked up to the titties, Steve? We're still saying, did I do that? Like, come on now. We're still having the suspenders. Like, what is this?
We have not evolved in it.
Yeah. Oh, boy. All right. Now, I was also thinking when Steve caused that madness with the floor buffer that he could have just waited until closing time. Like, why is he just using a floor buffer in the middle of the day when there are customers there?
That is one of the things I was like, that is disgusting. Think of all that dust that might be flying in people's food. That is crazy.
Yeah. Wait a minute. That's not a condiment. That's fucking like gray mush from the floor.
Ugh, my God.
All right. So Eddie enters and wow, did you see his shirt? His shirt was loud as fuck. He had a lot of colors and patterns going on.
He had a very interesting shirt. I don't even know how to describe that thing.
Yeah. But did he enter alone? He did not. He entered with Waldo, and Waldo appeared as his sidekick. This is the debut of Eddie and Waldo being a duet.
I think that the audience got a gem, and I think this was the episode that solidified it because they play off each other so well.
Yeah, and how fitting because one of our frequent social media commenters, Ben, remarked that the Life of the Party episode is the last appearance of Willie Fuffner. So now that Willie Fuffner is gone, Waldo needs someone to tell him what to do. He needs someone else, and that is, of all people, Eddie Winslow. Did you notice that Waldo is noticeably shorter than Eddie, and he has a fresh high top fade, and also he's just wearing a super extra large jacket that really does not fit him at all. I mean, I know it's 90s fashion, but when you look at it in 2025, where everybody's wearing things that actually fit them, maybe sometimes a little bit too tight on them, it's like, whoa, Waldo, are you wearing your dad's clothes?
That was the weird time in life where everybody bought things 2 sizes bigger for some reason. Is the weirdest point in life.
And it carried over into the 2000s too. I mean, were you like me? Were you wearing everything baggy, super, super thick? Or no, you were wearing things that fit?
I'm not a ruffian hooligan walking around here with baggy jeans, okay? I had decorum.
Oh, God, you weren't Steve Urkel's gangster cousin in later seasons when Carl was like, who the fuck is this gangster criminal giving me this attitude in this house?
That is still one of the most offensive episodes of Family Matters.
It's interesting that you reacted. Yeah, because I sent you that clip, and it's interesting that you reacted that way because I was just fucking laughing at how cringy it is. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Jaleel, Myrtle and Stefan was enough, but we got to go with Steve Urkel's gangster cousin. I mean, and to think that probably a white writing staff or a white producer had a role in that, it's like, oh God, you know that Joe Marie by that time was just like, okay, when's my contract up? I gotta go.
I feel like she looked at it like, so nobody black was in the room when this was written. So that means y'all feel that this is offensive and we should be offended by it. I was so offended by that.
Yeah.
Terrible choice writing staff.
Yeah, Jaleel offended his own black community with that stereotype. He offended Asians with the Bruce Lee impression. I think he was Elvis at one point. Oh my God. They just were running out of ideas by then. And it is both funny and very cringy.
It is. You know, thank goodness we can talk about it and it's not still airing.
Yeah. Yes. Thank God. All right, but back to this episode. Were you like me? Were you wondering like, oh, how are they going to explain like how Eddie and Waldo suddenly became like friendly like that, became the duet that they became, and Eddie reveals to Steve that Waldo is the one who sold him the ID bracelet for Jolene. So I thought, like, okay, I could see that. I could see that as a jumping off point to how they eventually became friends.
I can see it. It makes sense. I just love that back in this time, everybody always who was doing something nefarious was in some big oversized jacket and so obvious.
Yeah, God. Speaking of another negative stereotype, the sketchy, black street dealer. Like, hey, you want this watch that's normally $2,000, but I'm gonna give you it for $50 because you know my cousin.
Those are the people who make the world go round. I buy my laundry detergent from one of them.
Oh, really?
But yes, I'm not paying full price for laundry detergent. No way.
Okay.
Why?
Okay.
It's like, why do we have to make Waldo this character? Why can't they have been Rodney?
Yeah, that's true. Darn it. Well, Rodney's gone. Oh boy. All right. So Waldo had the hookup for the booze from Life of the Party. He's now the hookup guy for the ID bracelet that Steve needs to give to Laura. And I know that this is just kind of like the start of what Waldo will become throughout the series, but seeing how not that long ago Eddie kind of portrayed the dumbness that Waldo had, now it's like Waldo is season 1 dumb Eddie on steroids, because you have this moment where Eddie is about to exit and Waldo in his funny way is just like, cool, I'm going to follow you. And Eddie is like, no, 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 no. Waldo, you need to stay so that you can take care of Steve. And then Eddie says very slowly to Waldo, watch me as I leave so you remember the way out when you're done. I mean, it was surreal to me. I don't know if you felt that as well, because it was not too long ago that Laura was talking to Eddie that way. And now Eddie is transferring that dumbness to Waldo, and now Eddie seems like the smart one by comparison.
Making Eddie into street smart Eddie now, where it's like, okay, we got some smartness here. I felt like the joke could have ended without the watch me leave part. I felt that dragged it on too long, because I was like, oh, this part isn't funny. Damn, the rest of it was, but this I'm like, okay.
Yeah, right. Waldo's just like, cool, okay, all right, I get you. Again, I'm curious to hear what Sean Harrison thought about his character. I know he doesn't want to be on the podcast, but maybe if he changes his mind, we would love to hear his thoughts at some point. All right, so Waldo hid booze in his tiny trench coat pockets last time, and then when Steve asked him like where the bracelet is, Waldo, what's that string thing that loosens up Waldo's coat sleeve? What do you call that thing?
I think it was his hood string. What is that? Like it tightens the hood, like in a hoodie?
Yeah.
I think that's what he pulled. I'm gonna call it a drawstring.
Okay. Yeah, we can call it that. So it reveals a bunch of bracelets strapped up and down his arm. And I know it's Waldo, but I still was like, God, man, if this kid only knew what pockets or like a maybe tiny briefcase was, because that just seems like a lot of work to like just strap all those bracelets on your arm. I'm worrying about the circulation going up and down his arm. Like, what's going on?
I love that they were doing this. I feel like I've seen it referenced in a few different movies. Like where you have somebody who's like a bootlegger and they come in wearing 50 watches and all these bracelets. I was like, this is hilarious. Their source material was good for this.
I was thinking, have you seen the movie Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd? Yeah, it reminded me of Eddie Murphy's character. Even though I've never seen that movie, I have seen like little snippets of clips somewhere, and I just was thinking that was the kind of character Eddie Murphy was playing, right? Like that sort of like sketchy on the, and then he eventually just like hits it big, hits it rich or something like that out of a string of luck.
He does. He hits it big out of a string of luck, and that movie is so freaking good. I suggest everybody go watch it. If you want a good Eddie Murphy laugh, that's the movie.
Oh man, there's plenty of Eddie Murphy laughs to come from. And lastly, in this scene, one wonders how Waldo was smart enough to get this jewelry in the first place, because remember the dumb version of the bargaining that he was doing with Steve, where I think Waldo starts off with, $40 for this bracelet. And then Steve was like 30. Waldo was like 25. And then eventually Waldo's like 15, and I'm not going any higher than that. So he ends up with, what is it, like $25 less than what he originally asked for?
He does. And I love that Steve is just like, oh, I'm going to take you for all of this then.
Right? Steve was eager getting that cash out of his pocket. Like, oh my God, I'm getting a steal here. And he doesn't know about it.
This is the best moment ever. Steve is Steve Street Smarts, we're seeing it all come into play here.
Scene 4, going into the living room, and I believe, is this where Murtaugh comes to pick Rachel up? And man, if every guy picked up Rachel the way Murtaugh did, I would just be so sore from laughing. What were your thoughts about this living room scene as Rachel is reluctantly getting ready for her date with Mr. Lieutenant?
I love that we start with Judy and Richie. Judy gave me my favorite joke of the season so far.
Wow.
She said, we were playing hide and seek and I got bored. And I screamed when Judy said that because everybody's looking for Richie. They're concerned where he is. And she's just like, oh my God, we were playing hide and seek and I got bored.
Poor little kid. Was that you in real life? Were you that kind of person that played hide and seek for a long time and then you were just like, fuck it, I'm going to be done, but I'm not going to tell anybody?
Yes, 100%. I would be like, yes, guys, let's go play. And 5 minutes later, I'm like, okay, I'm over this. I'm going to go eat.
Look, I had a feeling that when we saw Judy at this moment, this would be the only time we would see her in the entire episode. Is that correct? Or do we see her at another point?
This is the only time we see her. She maximized her screen time for this one.
Yeah, she did a good job with this one. And she was wearing a purple and black striped referee shirt. It looked like a Judy version of a referee shirt. I mean, usually you have the white with the black stripes, but Judy had a purple in it.
It was interesting. I was like, she looks like the Hamburglar and Grimace together. It was the weirdest colored shirt I've ever seen.
Yep. That costume designer, they know what they're doing in terms of making us very confused. All right. So as you mentioned, Harriet was asking Judy where Richie is. Judy's very shocked because she just remembered she's playing hide and seek with Richie and then got bored. So Richie has been stuck in his hiding place for an hour. Can you imagine, as a kid with the attention span of a squirrel, being stuck in one hiding place for an hour in silence? Like, what?
Richie knew what he was doing. He's like, I'm going to be the master hide and seek player. And it's when the opening of the door in the living room.
Yeah.
And Richie is standing there and he's like, so really? I heard all of that.
Yeah, right? Yeah. I think it's the closet door behind the center couch where Judy finds Richie at his hiding spot after she's like surprised that she forgot about him after all this time. Richie would be so good with meditation because I would imagine that after maybe 5 minutes, a kid would make noise. They would do something. Like, I just cannot imagine a kid silently being in a hiding spot for an hour, just waiting, like not getting antsy, not getting bothery, like just waiting. So yeah, and look, I don't like little Richie as much as you do, but even I thought this was a cute, funny moment. Like, he was coming out with his arms crossed from that hiding spot, and he was like, well, it's about time.
He knew how to sell this line, and it's the next line that gets me, when she's like, I'm gonna go hide, and he's like, I'm just going to let her sit for a bit.
I remember that. And did you notice in that first line, the well, it's about time, that like Brighton McClure was like trying to hide a smile? It seemed like he almost was going to break character, but it wasn't quite.
He was ready. He was like, I finally get to say my line. And he was about to laugh. I saw it.
You know, I was actually confused. Speaking of them resuming the game, like Judy says she was bored, but then she's like, all right, I'm going to resume the game. I guess I'm not bored of it after all. So Richie is now it. And then, I think the exact wording that Richie had when Judy was going to her hiding spot was, I'm going to let her sweat for a few hours. For a few, not just 1 hour, a few. So a few is like 3 or 4.
Richie's smart. I would do the same thing. Okay, I'm about to have some juice. Let's read a book.
Look, I mean, I don't blame him, because Judy, like, Jesus Christ, an hour in that closet that's probably like hot and musty. That poor little kid. Come on now.
It's Chicago. He'll be fine.
All right. Richie's seen worse. All right. So Rachel's coming downstairs in her dark red, safe, femme fatale-ish date night outfit from Lieutenant Murtaugh. There were some people in the, I know. Like, there were some people in the studio audience that were like, woo. And look, I mean, Thelma Hopkins is a beautiful woman, but I thought that outfit, it wasn't like a sexy, stunning outfit. It was what I would call beautifully tame. It was kind of in between, like, all right, I'm dressing up, but I'm not dressing up too much.
It was ugly.
Oh, you hated it?
She meant to dress ugly. That's why when she came down and I think it was Harriet or somebody said, you look good. She's like, darn it. Like, she was trying to dress ugly.
Oh, okay. I mean, like, it didn't pop out as ugly to me.
They're dressing ugly.
Oh, okay. I mean, I think ugly to me would have been like Selma Hopkins in a penguin outfit, but that I just felt like, oh, she looks like she could just like go to Bible study in that outfit.
They're saying Rachel has so much style, she can't dress ugly, even when she tries. I was screaming at this moment because I'm like, scene, that is me. If I have to go do something I don't want to do, I want to look like shit. And if I succeed at it, good.
Yeah. But isn't it a compliment that even when you dress like shit, you dress a lot better than other people?
It is. It's one of those compliments just like, damn it, I can't even be ugly if I try.
So of course we're at this moment where we're stressing how bad of an idea this is, the Rachel Murtaugh date. Rachel wants to go upstairs and change after the other adults, compliment her outfit because Rachel doesn't want to give Murtaugh any quote unquote thoughts. Mama Winslow is telling Rachel that, hey, at least you have a man who can walk, talk, and has a job. I'd settle for 2 out of 3. And then Carla is telling her to perk up. I mean, I feel like we're getting confused here because I felt like we were focused on like the emotionless, straightforward, transactional portion of this, which was Rachel's only doing this for Carl so he gets that promotion. And now it's like, Rachel might catch feelings for him, like perk up, maybe get into it a little bit more. No, the former is what we agreed upon. We are going to go into this with no feeling whatsoever. And also, Mama Winslow, don't be promoting women settling for men. Come on now. No bare minimums here. Speaking as a man who has flaws himself, I was saying, no, we should expect better from our men.
But you don't date men.
Don't. I don't. So you tell me, because is it different for men in the queer community? Is it the same where it's just like, it's not different?
No, men are shit. No matter what, like sexual orientation, men are shit. I'm sorry. Like I was with Mama Winslow, and she's like, maybe he'll have 2 out of the 3, and you'll be lucky, because that's what it is dating out here right now. You can't find a man who has all 3 of those things.
What?
It's bad out here.
That's so sad. Have you ever this is probably a crazy question to ask, but have you ever been so discouraged by men to a point where you're like, maybe I should just be straight? Like I can't do this anymore.
Right now?
All right.
Like
because I've seen like movies and TV shows where like, I don't know, a gay man, a straight woman, they're friends and they're just so unlucky with finding love that they're just like, fuck it. Like if we're like in our mid 40s and shit still doesn't work out our way, let's just get married. We don't have to do all the sex stuff or whatnot. We can just have an arrangement because we just can't find anybody good.
That is what we do now. It's actually called a lavender marriage. It is very real. I am in the market for a lavender marriage. Think of all the benefits you're going to get from this. And that's it.
All right. Hey, do what works for you. That's what I always say. All right. So my dessert. I'm curious about how you thought about how Murtaugh created this entrance. We never even got to see him like when he was entering, because he was shouting from a megaphone outdoors unseen, and he was playing on his role as a police officer as he was trying to get Rachel ready for the date. Rachel, I know you're in there. Put your hands up and your dancing shoes on. Were you loving it? Where I was laughing. It's a problematic situation, but somehow Murtaugh makes it funny.
This is the best part of the episode.
Yeah.
This is my dessert, main course, and my appetizer all in this little second. When I tell you, when she opened the door and the spotlight came on, I screamed. I was like, this is gold. They gave me more than I thought I was going to get.
It seemed like the brightest police siren car light, whatever you want to call it, ever, as Rachel like opened the door. And still unseen Murtaugh, he like throws a bouquet of flowers to Rachel and then says, "You look beautiful, babe." And Rachel just turns to Carl like, "Carl, I swear, if I were you, I would not be here when I get home."
It's so good. This whole scene is so good.
It's great. It's just complicated for me because, man, this is so bad in a moral sense, but fuck. It's like what Urkel does, like how Urkel can both make you laugh and make you shake your head at his lack of morals. Murtaugh is the same way, which is why it's fitting that the episode ends the way it does.
It makes me wonder, was there any input from a Black person on this scene alone? Because the 2 ways I look at it, either y'all are so disconnected from reality, you thought that this was funny, and in its own realm, if we separate it from reality, it is hilarious. Or was this a commentary on how Black people are looked at by the police, and even a police officer who's not on duty is like, well, this is the only way I know how to interact with them. So let's see if it works.
Good point. Good point. It might be the latter. Especially looking at the very few Black people that were on the Family Matters staff, very much could be the latter. So I think scene 5 is going to be a long one because it just kind of like dances between the wrapping up of Rachel and Murtaugh and the wrapping up of the Steve and Laura situation. Both come at a peak. What do you think about this scene as we see Rachel and Murtaugh coming back from their dates and Steve and Laura coming back from work? Steve is trying to give Laura that bracelet, and we kind of know how that's going to work out. And we also kind of know how Rachel is going to react to having to deal with Murtaugh for the whole night with a headache.
I was disappointed.
No.
I thought the next scene was going to be the date. I was like, yes, we get to see what happens on their date. And I was disappointed that we didn't. But I did get a very fun scene here. And I'm just going to say one thing that I think is the funniest part of this entire scene. Murtaugh has his badge on his jacket, and it made me scream every time I looked at this suit jacket with this police badge hanging from it.
I'm telling you, even on his off hours, Murtaugh is like, hey, first name Lieutenant, this is my identity, this is who I am. I am not whoever the fuck my parents named me. Lieutenant, 24 hours a day.
I am Lieu for short.
Yep.
You can just call me Lieutenant.
EU to you. So before Rachel could notice in time, Murtaugh, just like he did with Carl in the beginning, he just barges in uninvited after the date, back at the Winslow house. I'm going to say it right now, Lieutenant Murtaugh is the poster boy for both white privilege and boss privilege. He's just like, I rule the roost. I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. I'm not going to listen to the other person. It's what I want. It's my way or the highway.
He just has this privilege. He just walks in and he does that. And I'm going to tell you guys, any man who does that, you are not a good person to continue dating. Okay? If he does not ask permission before stepping in your home, he is not good.
And I think we're getting the reason why Murtaugh is the way he is, because Rachel was, claiming that like, hey, I gotta wrap it up because I have a headache. And Murtaugh was like, I don't get headaches. Must be the steel plate. And he was like rubbing his head. And maybe that's why he is as dumb and clueless as he is. Maybe he just got shot around the head and had a steel plate put in to keep himself living. And now it just affected his intelligence.
It explains it. It explains something happened. He had a TBI and they're like, let's put a metal plate on the side where all the skull was missing.
TDI.
A traumatic brain injury.
TBI, B as in boy, not D as in dog. I was like, TDI, traumatic dick injury? What?
Wow.
I mean, Murtaugh should be getting that after how he's treating Rachel in this episode, but that's for another day. That's for another day. As of now, normal Murtaugh dick is happening right now. So again, we're referencing the taking credit episode because Murtaugh, he's just really going along with legally changing his first name to Lieutenant when Rachel starts her attempt by, saying like, Lieutenant, let me explain something to you. And Murtaugh quickly cuts her off. Please call me Lieu. Lieu. Call me Lieu. Not Lieu for Lewis, Lieu for Lieutenant.
I just loved it. I'm like, thank you, Lieutenant Murtaugh.
Yeah, only him. And I love this little detail. Like Murtaugh is like, trying to hold his grip on Rachel's hand, and Rachel just does a slap as she continues with whatever she's saying, because in this situation, it could be very easy for Murtaugh to completely take over and Rachel to just kind of go along with it. But Rachel just like slapping his hand away to like ease up on the grip lets us know that she still has a way to maintain control.
Yes. She's like, I am here. This is my home. Just for anybody who's wondering, Murtaugh is the version of your grandfather that you didn't know existed.
Grandfather that's just a little too touchy-feely and weird about his affection toward you.
Creepily.
Yep. Those old people, aren't they something? All right. So a big question mark expression on my face. What? What are you laughing at? Me saying
in that moment where Murtaugh's touching her and she's like, I think I hear somebody at the car. When Murtaugh says no, we would have heard it blow up. I screamed.
Yep. And that was my next point. That gave me a big question mark because I believe it was Rachel's next exit strategy plan to claim that like, oh, Murtaugh, like I think someone's at your car. I think I hear your car alarm going off. And then Murtaugh was like, nah, believe me, I'd hear the explosion. I had to literally look this up on the internet, Andrew. I was like, it's possible to create a bomb in your car that only goes off when thieves steal it. And the internet just had in big bold letters, it is illegal and dangerous to do this. Do not do this. So my question is there an exemption for police officers? And I guess another question is, can that be murder, or can you claim that as self-defense?
Okay. So I'm laughing because I've had my car broken into so many times.
Yeah.
And I thought of doing this. So he's talking about rigging the car with explosives. So when you start it and the ignition sparks, it explodes. And that is what they do in mob movies. And that happens all the time in police movies, especially when police are trying to take down somebody. So the fact that this man is like, no, I just rigged my car as a bomb. So that's my crime theft deterrent is hilarious. Yeah. But it is very illegal. I think it's considered manslaughter if you do it, because there was a while ago, any of our delicious remember this. You're probably around my age, but there were car thefts happening in the late 90s, early 2000s. And there was a company that was installing a flamethrower that you could put in your steering wheel. So someone broke into the car, it would go off and blast flames into their face. Of course, it did not get approved. But it didn't get approved because people would have been getting sued left and right for this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. God. I mean, you don't have a car, and then you're responsible for the murders of all these people. I mean, where do you begin? Wow. Okay. But again, Murtaugh, going back to his privilege, he just feels like he can get away with it. And
I just want to know, where the hell do you live that you need to rig your car with a bomb as a crime deterrent?
I mean, Chicago is crime central. So I guess I could understand. I mean, maybe there's just a bunch of hoodlums, but that Murtaugh is paranoid about, and he just wants to make sure that his car is well protected.
It's just hilarious to me.
I can imagine. It's quite something. So we get an interesting pivot that Rachel is doing here after Murtaugh asked her how she thought the date went tonight. And I thought that Rachel could have lied and said like, oh, hey, we have, had a good time, as a way to somehow get Murtaugh to exit. But no, I mean, Rachel was just like, fuck it. I got nothing to lose. I'm going to tell you, Murtaugh, that it was awful. Like, you were cutting up my steak into pieces and feeding it to me like I'm a baby. And what did you think about this moment? I found it to be a little weird when Rachel was like, next thing you know, you're going to try to burp me. And then Murtaugh suggestively walks up behind Rachel, puts her on the back as if he's about to burp her, and says, is that an invitation, baby? I mean, I wanted to find that moment funny, but I was just kind of creeped out, to be honest with you. What did you think?
He thought that this was the perfect representation of the modern man.
Yeah.
Where it's like, so you're upset that I didn't burp you? And the woman's like, you did not listen to a word I said. And he's like, but I'm going to burp you. Everything's going to be okay.
If you're trying to make sexy time out of a burp, you're not succeeding, man.
You're missing the point.
You're really not. Tell me a situation, Andrew, where somebody used a burp to become sexy in a sexual moment.
Okay, I have a story. He did it because I was making out with somebody and I burped in their mouth. Oh my God, it was so weird. And I was like, now you taste like me.
So you said that like seriously and sexually to like keep the mood going, and they bought it?
I did. I don't know if they bought it. We still had sex, but...
So can I ask, because my first thought would be like, if I was the guy that you kissed, my first thought would be like, oh God, like I wonder what he ate. Like do you remember what you ate, and if the guy remarked on what your breath smelled like? Or
I think that night I didn't eat anything.
Okay.
It's a gray area. Our gay listeners, you get it. If you're a bottom, you don't eat before you have sex. So I think it was that.
I thought it was just you eat foods that will complement you well when the consummation happens. But you're saying that you don't eat at all.
No, because I mean, whether it's offensive smelling poo or not.
Okay. I just thought that there was like some advice column that's like, oh, if you eat peaches, the poo will smell a little bit better.
No, that's great for other items to smell and taste better, but not poo.
Gotcha. It makes sense to me now. All right. So, God, I wish Rachel had a whistle to blow on this man, because he is like, thankfully we're not like, getting to the moment of rape, but like Murtaugh is just kind of like in that lane where it's like, oh God, if this was a drama, Like you would have to get the pepper spray out, the whistle, call a cop who would actually make sense, and not a cop like Murtaugh. He's bordering.
Murtaugh's not getting it. He's breaking personal space. I would have loved it if Rachel pulled out a whistle and kicked him in the nuts. That would have been hilarious.
That would have been great. So we do a quick cut to the kitchen and see someone opening the back porch door. I almost thought it was going to be Carl hearing what was going on in the living room and coming to Rachel's rescue, but it was not. It's Steve and Laura coming from work in their uniforms. Laura is very annoyed, understandably, at Steve because he is just right behind her, just following her every step, every move. Apparently that restraining order of 20 feet that was mentioned in the Fight the Good Fight episode, I guess that's not a thing anymore because Steve is very much violating that.
Laura's just like, forget it. This piece of paper is not going to help.
Oh, God. And now I'm noticing the parallel. It's like, oh, yeah, Steve and Murtaugh, both creepy guys who cannot take no for an answer. Here we go.
Like, we have this whole world colliding in this moment, and it's all taking place under one roof.
Yeah, right? The Winslow house, the house of toxicity. I love that. Laura threatens Steve to leave the house or else there will be a big accident in the kitchen. That's like self-defense, right? If you murder somebody who's trying to make a move on you and you don't want them to.
I mean, legally it should, but I mean, if you've got a good lawyer, you can fight back against that. But legally, it should.
Okay. God, who's a good lawyer who can get that done for you?
You just gotta find a good criminal defense lawyer, and you might be able to get that one thrown out.
Like a legitimate one who has morals, or like a really shady one, like a Roy Cohn kind of person?
Roy Cohn. And y'all, don't be mad at these attorneys who are just doing their job. Because if I were like up for a crime, I'm getting the shadiest lawyer possible. I'm not playing fair.
There you go. I mean, how can you? I mean, because, the justice system is already against you, so you got to do what you got to do to get ahead.
You do?
Oh, God. All right, so Steve gets out the gift that he has for Laura out of his pocket. Laura is like, what, a present? And Steve gives quite the wordplay here. He's like, a bauble for my bodacious babe. A lot of B's in there. Bauble, have you heard the word bauble before this episode? B-A-U-B-L-E?
I don't know why people use the word bauble when they're describing precious stones or jewelry, but I have heard it multiple times referring to jewelry.
Okay, first time I've heard the word bauble. I don't know if you ever watched Dragon Ball Z, but it reminded me of Majin Buu. It's like Majin Buu, bauble. Like, that's the only relation that I had in my head. Yeah, Majin Buu. God, they dedicated like half the show to that fucking villain. All right. Bauble on the internet means a small showy trinket or decoration, and bodacious, even though I've heard that word used many a time before. Excellent, admirable, attractive. So there you go. Steve reads the dictionary. We get that point. And Laura is reading the horribly misspelled inscription on the bracelet as made by Waldo. To Laura, all my glove, sleeve.
I love it so much. It's so good.
And if I were Steve, I'd be outraged. I'd be like, oh my God, this is what I paid my good hard-earned money for. But Steve was just like, you know what? I'm actually surprised that Waldo had as good spelling as he did with this.
You know what? You got to take the victory when you get it. Steve is like, I got this for super cheap and it's engraved. Just ignore the spelling. Your name is spelled correctly on it.
Technically, you got what you paid for, even though it was originally going for $40. Now it's $15. You're getting $15 quality right there.
You got Temu instead of Amazon.
Temu? What's Temu? Is that like a bootleg Amazon?
Yes, it is the Chinese version of Amazon, and do not order from it.
How do you spell that? T-I-M-U?
T-E-M-U.
Okay. Interesting that you say that, because I know you were like in favor of like another Chinese alternative to TikTok, but this is the thing that the Chinese has made that's not recommended.
This is not recommended because they're not safe with your data, but I mean, who cares about data? But the other side of it, their products are just actually super cheap. Don't get them. They will break in like the first 5 minutes.
Okay. That is good to know. We get the stark difference between the actual reality Laura lives in and the imaginary reality that Steve lives in when Laura says that she cannot accept the bracelet because her and Steve are not going steady. Well, first of all, you could give a bracelet to somebody and not have it be a steady relationship, right? I mean, there's other ways you could give somebody a bracelet, like, I don't know. Yeah, right? Yeah, like happy Mother's Day, Mom. Here's a bracelet.
Yeah, a bracelet is such a platonic thing to me. It's like, it doesn't have to be like a romantic thing. It's not like it says it says I love you, but it's just a bracelet.
Mommy, I love you. Love your favorite son, says the bracelet. And the mom's just like, okay, whoa, hello. Someone went to Dr. Freud a little bit too much.
She's like, I'm not wearing this.
Oh boy. All right. So Steve argues that Laura blowing him a kiss the other day means their relationship is progressing. Laura takes a moment and she's like, Steve, I was chewing my gum and spitting it out.
This interaction with Steve and Laura is so good.
Yeah. And you know what? May I admire Laura, even though it doesn't end well, she does begin by putting empowerment in the girl blaming herself for the guy's flaws trope when she tells Steve that, hey, it's my fault for leading you to think that our relationship is progressing. You know why? Because I've been slacking off lately on telling you how much I hate you. So I'm going to do the work. I'm going to remind you every day from now on how much I will never, ever, ever, ever go out with you. And then, of course, does Steve get the point? He's like, okay, cool. But can you still wear the bracelet?
He's like, I paid for this. Put this on your body right now.
Come on. $15 out of my hard-earned salary and it's misspelled. Come on, baby. Come on, wear it for me, baby.
He's like, just 5 minutes. Just put it on so that way I know my money didn't go to waste.
Right. And then Laura just has like this shaking conniption with her body because she's just so frustrated that Steve doesn't get the point. And then she just heads upstairs and darn it, what could have been a nice female empowerment ending to this, it was a reminder that it's a man's world and women just live in it.
As long as he's offering you jewelry.
Yeah. Yeah. But look, I will say that Steve did create a little bit of an amusing moment when he just looked around after Laura exited and was just like, you know what? I'm offended. I think I'll go now.
It's so good.
All right. We come back to the living room. Rachel and this is where the fucking shit gets weird. Rachel and Murtaugh in the living room. And wow, Murtaugh pulling the same move Steve did to Laura in the Marriage 101 episode. If you remember, the song Murtaugh is playing, the same exact song that Steve was playing for Laura to serenade her when they were doing the pretend marriage. It's an instrumental of the Frank Sinatra song, Strangers in the Night. I don't know what about that song is like the ultimate romantic song, but it's and the big musical thing that we're about to see later on, it shows the age of the writing staff very much.
It does. I don't like this song at all.
It's not a great song.
It's not. And the Frank Sinatra version of it where he's singing, it's good to listen to, but all I get is like old Bugs Bunny cartoon when I hear it. And I'm like, I'm not into this music.
Sinatra himself didn't like the song. I mean, and you listen to it and it's just cheesy cornball ballad shit. And Frank, as a fan of Frank Sinatra and a lot of his other songs, I mean, he has much better music than that song. So it's not his greatest song, but it seems like it's one of the most popular songs that he's known for. So we get a parallel of the Steve and Laura situation where Murtaugh trying to put the moves on Rachel. Rachel gets to the point where she says point blank, you know what, Lieutenant, you repulse me. Murtaugh still doesn't get the point and asks Rachel if she wants to slow dance and neck a little. Rachel, just like Laura, just shakes in frustration and just like, go home. And then she just goes up the stairs and like holds her head because she just has a fucking headache from this guy. I mean, you probably would have a headache too if you had to deal with this motherfucker all night.
I would have been so over this date. Like, I probably would have just left him standing there. I wouldn't have even said go home. I just would have walked upstairs and just slammed the door.
Yeah. Rachel forgot to bring her ibuprofen on this date.
She did. It happens. Sometimes when you see certain men, you get a headache instantly.
Do you now have you done that in the past where you go into a first date and then like in your pocket you're just like just in case this guy gives me a splitting headache with I don't know either his dumbness or his MAGA talk, like I just need ibuprofen.
Oh yeah, my ibuprofen is a text message that's already ready to be sent to somebody to say, call me and pretend there's an emergency.
Did you notice the random portrait of Rachel to the right of the center couch?
I saw it. I was like, why is there a portrait of her?
I guess Murtaugh planted that there to like, get lucky.
It's even creepy.
It is. It is. Junk food moment right here. I had a big what the fuck when Murtaugh was going into this dramatic monologue that eventually turned into song. Like he's just like in the monologue, he just says some shit like, "Oh, they tell me that you're leaving. I can't believe it's true. Because girl, there's just no living without you." I think he was just quoting the song that he was about to sing, which I find out eventually is, I think it's Breaking Up Is Hard to Do by Neil Sedaka, which was a hit in the fucking 70s. I mean, we're talking 1991, so this song was already fucking old as hell by the time this episode aired. But yeah, no, he just belts out. Have you heard this song? Are you a fan of it?
I'm not a fan of the song, but I have heard the song because this moment here, Murtaugh, if you are familiar with Futurama, gives me Lieutenant Brannigan to a T. When I tell you I laughed so hard.
Yeah, I gotta watch Futurama. I have no idea what that reference is. Yeah, so Murtaugh just belts out into Breaking Up Is Hard to Do by Neil Sedaka, and then Steve enters the living room. He's just like, what the fuck is going on? Is this a Broadway show that I'm entering into? Like, why is the lieutenant breaking out into song like this? And then, of course, Jesus fucking Christ, what else did we expect? Of course, Steve is going to join Murtaugh into this whole Broadway rendition of this Neil Sedaka song. And they're in bondage because, of course, they're both guys who just won't take no for an answer. And they're trying to just commiserate in their loneliness of these ladies who just reasonably don't want anything to do with them. And, oh, God, I will say one little funny moment. We get a close-up shot of Steve. He has this big musical note. I beg of you. Like, that moment was a funny moment. But other than that, I was wondering if you were finding this moment funny or just very weird.
So it was weird. It was weird. It was funny when Brannigan, oh my God, when Murtaugh, I'm telling y'all, you got to watch Futurama because it literally, word for word, it is the same energy. But I thought it was good up until the song started.
Yeah.
And then when the song started, I was like, oh, the rest of this episode is just junk.
It is.
So I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. It really affected my rating that we'll talk about later on. If a sitcom breaks into song, it's usually never a good sign. It really is not. And we've had moments like this before already in Family Matters where there's just a random musical rendition. We all know those shows that just feel like, all right, let's have a musical episode. And that can go either way. And in this moment with Steve and Murtaugh doing their little Broadway Neil Sedaka song moment, it was something. It was something. It's almost the end of a long season 2. The writers are clearly cooked.
They are. They're like throwing a musical number. And we don't know what we're doing, but you're going to do the choreography in real time with each other on the stage.
Yeah. I also just have to stress that it is just really weird when you have writers from an older generation writing for a show and using their pop culture references that they know from their generation and putting it on a show that's clearly meant for a younger generation. And you just already know that the younger generation is not going to know what the fuck is going on. Like, think about, could have been last week's episode when Steve was singing a part of a Tony Orlando and Dawn song, fittingly enough featuring Thelma Hopkins. But yeah, this is a group that was relevant in the fucking 70s. Here we are 20 years later in the 90s. Who the fuck is going to think these people are cool other than the boomers that are writing episodes of Family Matters? Like, I don't think Family Matters was aiming for the boomer audience. I think it was mostly Gen X and 80s born millennials. So when you throw out some Neil Sedaka and Tony Orlando and Dawn, it's just like, what are you doing? Like get at least a consultant on your staff who represents the generation that is watching your show.
Yes, because there's so many other, they could have done Girl, You Know It's True. Like they could have done so many other songs that would have been way more relevant for the audience at that time.
But what did they do? They just repeated MC Hammer. Like, I think they showed MC Hammer twice in either one season or whatever, but that's the best that these writers could come up with. Is like, oh yeah, these kids with their hippity hop, like MC Hammer, you can't touch this. That's a hot song. Like I think that's the only, and Bobby Brown. Yeah, we got a lot of MC Hammer and Bobby Brown. That was like the only pop culture references that were relevant and current to the early 90s that the writers could come up with. But other than that, we're just getting fucking Neil Sedaka and Tony Orlando and Dawn. Weird. Yeah. Anyway, and Boy Meets World. I remember the Pod Meets World podcast when they were talking about that same thing, that older generation of writers writing for fucking teenagers. You know, they're like, guest starring on this week's Boy Meets World episode, the Monkees. And the Monkees are like fucking, I don't know, from like the 60s. Back when like the singers had their own variety shows. Like they're from that Sonny and Cher era. And this is the fucking 90s where people are like on fucking Nirvana and NWA and Alanis Morissette. But no, the Monkees.
We're going to bring the Monkees. God, I need people to catch up in time.
Yeah, boy. Anyway, but of course, at the end of this Broadway duet between Urkel and Murtaugh, the audience had to applaud that horse shit. And I love at least that Steve was aware of the badness of this moment when, Murtaugh looked at Steve like, you don't live here. And then Steve was like, neither do you. And then Murtaugh was like, well, what the hell are we doing here? And then Steve was like, well, certainly not harmony.
I love that he broke the wall. It was like, okay, we're going to acknowledge this was bad. We all know it was bad.
Yep. And then we wrap up with Murtaugh leaning into his depression and just being like, God, I need a drink. And Steve was like, me too. And I know just the place. For a second, I almost thought that we were going to have a minor drink beer with like adult Murtaugh at a bar somewhere. But luckily, we don't get that. Final scene, scene 6. We are back at Rachel's place. What were your thoughts as Steve and Murtaugh are just, it's not trauma bonding. It's what do you call bonding over a shared failed romantic history?
They're codependent. That's what I'm going to call them.
Okay. All right. So Steve and Murtaugh, they're just depressed, talking about their women troubles over root beer floats. What were your thoughts about this last scene?
Okay, so this is the Steve Urkel show. This was bad. I did not like this scene at all. It was interesting that Rachel's place is the place they go to, because I don't think Steve would have a key, but maybe Murtaugh was like, I'm a cop, we can just break in.
I guess Rachel is nowhere to be found when she was a central part in this story. And when Steve and Murtaugh are commiserating over at Rachel's place, were you like me? Were you also wondering, could they have had Carl come in some form to either like tell Murtaugh off about the wrongness of being pressuring Carl to be set up with Rachel, or maybe just Carl checking in to see with Murtaugh, like, oh, how did it go? Like, and then maybe Carl and Murtaugh had an amusing moment where Murtaugh was just crying, like, oh my God, nobody wants me. And then Carl just being awkward, like, okay, buddy boy, as he's like patting Murtaugh on the back as Murtaugh's like reaching for a hug. I just was wondering if you thought as well if Carl could have been incorporated in some way, because as you had mentioned, I mean, we have a lot of Winslow Family Matters energy when it came to Carl, Rachel, Mama Winslow, Harriet, all taking in this Murtaugh situation. And then all of a sudden it became the Steve and Murtaugh Broadway musical depression show.
It did. Like, it would have made sense. You're singing in a house full of people if Carl came downstairs and was like, what the hell is all this noise?
Yeah.
And then like, oh, you guys won't leave, and Murtaugh forces them to go out for a drink. Like, that would have made sense. Something. Like, you could have incorporated at least Carl here, but they didn't even do that.
Yeah. As Steve and Murtaugh said to each other at the Winslow house, it's very fitting enough for this entire last part of the episode. What the hell are we doing here?
Sums it up. That sums it up. Yes.
Were you initially thinking that they were pounding down glasses of chocolate milk? It almost looked like that for a second.
I couldn't tell what it was, and I didn't know what a root beer float was, so I had to like look it up, and I was like, oh, that's what they're drinking? That's even grosser.
You'd never heard of a root beer float before?
It's got frozen cow juice in it. I would never eat that.
I forgot. Yes, you are not of the ice cream fan base. Root beer and vanilla ice cream. If you like ice cream, then it could sound like a great summer treat. I've been addicted to root beer floats every now and then. I've had my moments where I've drank too much of them, and then I get tired of it and I don't do it anymore, and then I get back into it. But if you don't like ice cream, then yes, I could understand how it would be like, what?
It's the combination of two things that I hate the most. I hate soda and I hate ice cream. You combine them together, it's like my worst enemy created.
It's basically asking for, I think you would essentially be in charge of murdering your stomach if you did that. I think you would be an accomplice to the murder.
Oh yeah. I feel like you would have some kind of unearthly demon residing inside of you, and when you go to the bathroom, you better pray to God.
I mean, let's go back to this scene. Like, as much as I like root beer floats, did you see how many that Steve and Murtaugh were pounding? I was like, man, y'all's colon, it's gonna speak up at some point. Like 5 or 6 of those things in a row.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna move your colon a lot.
We get there to them, and they've already had, I think, 2 apiece, and they were finishing a third, and then they go make a fourth. Oh no, my stomach with all that lactose. Count me out.
Yeah, I'm reminded of my main course in this last scene. Look, the way Steve and Murtaugh are commiserating with each other, I know that we've gotten moments that the audience has found funny. Murtaugh has given me some entertaining stuff. I think Urkel has given me some entertainment in this episode as well. But the way they're commiserating in their sadness, I think the writing, the producers. I think they're trying to get us to just sort of sympathize with these guys. Like, oh, hey, like these guys make us laugh. So because they make us laugh and they give us a good time, darn, like, you know, these guys are sad together. We're kind of sad for them. And we're hoping that they can get their shot with the ladies. And I was just like, no, I wasn't buying it. I was just saying, fuck these guys because, you know, Steve, for the umpteenth time, leave Laura the fuck alone. She doesn't want you. And Murtaugh, again, fireable offense, maybe a lawsuit that could get you arrested. I don't know about these things, but to try to, you know, get with your boss's sister-in-law as a way to, to try to get with your inferior employee's sister-in-law and know that this is a way that your inferior employee will know that they're secure in their job. There's no way I'm going to feel bad for you guys as you're commiserating on your unluckiness with the ladies. So that's just my main course here is just we're supposed to feel bad for men when clearly we have no reason to.
I have it in my notes, like, why are we ending the episode with them? Like, it would have been so much more fun after Laura and Rachel both said, get out. They leave. And then Laura and Rachel come together and talk about their horrible experience.
I would have loved that. I would have loved that.
It would have been so good. I'm like, why are we ending it with Steve and Murtaugh? And it wasn't even funny at that point to me. I was like, okay, the joke of Murtaugh is worn out. The joke of Steve is not funny here. And I'm like, why are we ending it this way?
Yeah, because Laura and Rachel, like their boundaries, their wants, their needs were being considered. Their boundaries were being violated. Should be wrapping up the episode with them, but no, we're wrapping up the episode with these two guys that are playing victim when they're clearly the perpetrator?
Yeah, they're the perpetrator.
So yeah, I hate that shit. But you know, we get a glimmer in this last scene of Murtaugh and Steve becoming aware that they don't listen to women really well. When Murtaugh was like, God, I thought that women go for a take charge kind of guy, and then Steve was like, well, I tend to be a put him on a pedestal and be lucky if they pay attention to me kind of guy. So there's like little hints that they're kind of realizing like, oh, we fucked up. Not all women are the same. Maybe there's something that we could do to change our ways, but it's just a little hint. For the most part, there's still dicks who don't get the point, but a little bit. Maybe there's a little bit of hope there.
Maybe there's a little growth. That's what they wanted us to end with. Like, oh, it's a little growth. Here we go. We're good.
Yeah. Steve has the potential to be better, but just chooses not to. That's what I was thinking when we get to this moment where Murtaugh was like, you know, maybe we shouldn't go out with women anymore. And then Steve said something that I feel like Humphrey Bogart would say in Casablanca. Lieutenant, as much as we don't get women, we need them. And Murtaugh was like, yeah, we need women so they can breed more men. And Steve came back and even Steve was just like he said sarcastically, gee, I don't know why Rachel didn't flip for you.
Even Steve says he's like, oh my God, I hope I'm not this man.
Yeah. So you could kind of see that Steve knows what the right thing to do is, but man, when he falls in love hard, he just can't let that addiction go.
You can't. That he loves that stalker energy. He's like, I'm not giving up.
Yeah. Well, if the goal of this episode was to show us how dumb straight boys and men can be and how hard it would be for them to change their ways, we're certainly getting it. As Steve reverts back to his classic, I've loved Laura forever. She doesn't love me back, so I'll keep trying until she does shtick. Murtaugh says in response, I hear you, kid. I've been on only one date with Rachel, and she's gotten to me. She's copped this cop's heart. And then Murtaugh takes a sip of his root beer float and leaves quite the creamy mess on his nose and mouth. Kind of like a, got milk mustache, like that we always used to see in the commercials.
I laughed at that.
Yeah. And Steve does the same thing. He just has his sip and he's just like, Lieutenant. And then you see the creamy mess on Steve's nose and mouth. So, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of nostalgia and comfort food that can come from watching 90s sitcoms like this. But I think it was Ryder Strong from the Pod Meets World podcast who reminded me that if there's anything that I could do away with from 90s sitcoms, it's that very black and white, men are from Mars, women are from Venus kind of mentality. Like, oh, men are dumb and need to be treated like children by women. And basically Home Improvement. If you watch Tim Allen in Home Improvement, you just get that impression. Like, men love cars and women and they're dumb. They're making random caveman noises. And women are the smart ones that hold the house together with the children and they treat their husbands like children because they don't know any better.
Right. They just tap into reality and realize Men can smell good, they can look good, they can dress good, and still be just as dumb. Like, I don't understand why they miss out on that.
I don't know. But anyway, so I think my very last point was a junk food. It's Murtaugh and Steve with their messy root beer float mustaches. They toast to the women they love and to the day when they can stand the sight of them. So it's I mean, I don't know what do we learn from that? I mean, as the credits roll up and we have that freeze frame of Steve and Murtaugh's root beer float toast, what do we learn? What do we learn? Women who actually want to be with you. Sure, we would love for them to stand the side of you, but women who don't want to be with you, it's not even a relevant point.
It's not. When they tapped the glasses, I was like, okay, there's got to be another scene. There's another scene here. Gonna wrap it up. When the credit came up and it freeze froze, I was like, what did I just watch?
Yeah, this wasn't a classic episode. So go ahead. What's your delicious star rating?
0.
Okay. I'm surprised. Why do you say that?
So it's a 0, and the problem here is that final scene, the final ending of scene 5 into scene 6. It really destroyed the episode. Murtaugh was hilarious. We got Richie and Judy. I laughed. I had a bunch of desserts, but I had nothing to fill me up here. What I wanted was to see the date. Why would you guys not show us the funniest portion of this? And then the choice to end it with Murtaugh and Steve. I'm disappointed. I am disappointed. When you asked earlier, have I ever gotten so annoyed with a guy where I'm just like, fuck it, I'll go straight? I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna go watch Friends.
Wow, that bad?
Yeah. This was that bad where I'm like, okay, put on an episode of Friends. I bet you I'll laugh at that episode of Friends before I laugh at the ending of this episode.
God damn. You see, I would feel the opposite because I'm a fan of Friends. So to get that Family Matters stench off of me, I would actually watch an episode of Friends to be entertained. But I love how for you it's totally the opposite. So that's hilarious.
Man, whoever wrote this episode, I'm sorry, it was not good.
That's probably why they changed their name. They were like, oh God, I'm so ashamed that I have to legally change my identity.
Yes, I feel it was very not good. I'm just going to keep going back to it. It wasn't good, unfortunately. And I do hope that we get a redo or some kind of like story developed and built from this, because we were starting off good. The bones of this episode were good. I think God just made a mistake.
But God doesn't make mistakes if he has Devin cured from his ibuprofen addiction.
With the power of Jesus, get me off this Advil.
Love is blind. You're so entertaining. All right. Anyway, I initially gave this episode a 1.5, but now I feel like that's a too generous of a rating, so I think I'm going to bump it down to a 1, a solid 1. The one part of it is the fun moments that we get from Murtaugh. Yes, problematic what he does with Rachel and Carl, but still, this speaks to Barry Jenner's talent. The way he has formed this character, you can still laugh through all the problematic shit. So thank you, Murtaugh, for that. I love, of course, we kiss Reginald VelJohnson's ass because he deserves it. His comedic talents as Carl, they're so underrated, and they showcase very well once again in this episode, especially when it comes to him having to tell Rachel the bad news about going out on the date with Murtaugh. Something about, like, especially when all the adults are involved, you got your Harriet, your Rachel, your Mama Winslow, they make a great piece of comedy together. The Aunt Chloe Bubba stuff alone, I mean, my God, that's like top tier season 2 big laugh moment for me. So, shout out to the Winslow adults for holding it down when it could be very easy to forget about that because we're slowly but surely getting into Urkel mania. Now, why this episode wasn't rated higher, it's pretty obvious. It's 2025, and to see the 1991 okayness of an employee feeling like he has no choice but to set his horny boss up with his sister-in-law just so he can keep his job. The sister-in-law makes it clear that she does not want this man. And then we get that parallel of both Urkel and Murtaugh not knowing when to take no for an answer to their respective females. And then at the end of the episode, we're supposed to laugh and maybe feel sorry for their losses. I mean, especially when all they get out of this is like, all right, we're just going to keep on trying. We're going to keep on trying. Even though we got no, we're going to keep on trying to make it a yes. What lesson have we learned here? In 1991, we could just kind of laugh it off and be like, ah, but I don't know. In 2025, it just doesn't play well. And I think it's an extension of the Reddit discussion that I've seen every now and then about Family Matters concerning the fact that, wow, Like, it's not a show made for the binge-worthy streaming era, because when you see episode after episode after episode, I mean, you see so many issues with continuity, repetitive storylines, people disappearing without logical explanation. We get questions of moral choices. I mean, yeah, they clearly were just like, all right, we're just going to make an episode. We're just going to wing it. Maybe you'll see it again in 3 or 4 months if you haven't seen it. Like, it's definitely made to be like an isolated, like 1 week, hey, you enjoyed this, and then maybe you will forget about it like weeks from now, because you'll either never see it again, or maybe the episode will be rerun in the year 2000. So that's what I'm learning, is that Family Matters is definitely it's definitely made for its time.
I am learning that these older shows are not binging. You
Yeah.
don't binge watch them, because you will hate it by the time you get to the end of your binge.
Yeah. I don't want to think that, because you and I we're kind of dancing with the idea of, like, if we're gonna like actually review the entire series. I mean, part of me thinks like, oh God, I think we might just get some like cathartic joy out of like how bad it is, but I also wonder if we're just gonna genuinely cringe and hate ourselves because of watching so much bad TV.
I had to check myself, because if y'all remember, in the first season, I was watching like batches of episodes, like
Oh
3
God,
to 4 at a time. No, not
don't do that.
anymore. You will not get me to do that. You cannot get me to watch Family Matters on any day except Monday. Monday is the day I watch it. It's one time a week,
Yeah.
because I got so annoyed. I was like, oh my God, if I have to hear a fucking "did I do that again," I am not
Yeah.
watching the show.
Yeah. It's definitely made to be, 30 minutes, one Friday night. You got to have delayed gratification. You just have to get it in little bits and pieces. It's definitely not a Breaking Bad or whatever other shows in the streaming era that are great when you binge them like 13 or 14 episodes in a row. Yeah, 3 or 4 episodes in a row. Jesus Christ, Andrew, are you trying to be suicidal here? Because like me, I literally, like, the only time I'm watching a Family Matters episode, it's one a week, and it's on the day that you and I have to record a recap of said episode. That's all. I'm definitely not gonna casually watch it on my own time, because as I've learned from when I had to watch like the Paris 2-parter in season 8, it could be challenging to watch Family Matters for fun.
I was so happy that I knew Nikki Node and other people. I was like, oh my God, I don't have to sit through an hour of this. Okay, we're good. I'm like, just watch the clip and everything else I know about.
Yep, absolutely. Well, not the greatest episode for both of us, and we're hoping that with 2 more episodes left in the season, it gets better. Hopefully they wrap it up with a bang. Delicious, if you want to find us, you are able to. Listen, subscribe, follow, rate, review, watch the Delicious Recap wherever you get your podcasts. Questions, comments, concerns, always email us, thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. That is thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. All the social medias, we're still there. The Meta platforms, the TikTok, the Reddit, the Patreon, the Delicious Recap. Look up the fucking picture of the Urkel and the Living Single and the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and the Cream Savers, and we're there. That's us. Speaking of our Patreon, it's there if you want to get your episode recaps and interviews earlier than the general public does for just $5 a month. Patreon.com/Delicious Recap. And I have seen that Patreon has an option where you don't have to like necessarily do a entire overall membership. You could like pay for just one product. So, for example, if you want to pay to get early access to just a certain episode, you have the option to do that. And I believe that we set it at $3 for that. So, say if you have one particular episode that you're interested in hearing us recap earlier than the general public, there is there's a way you could do that. So, know that your options are expansive. Yes. How can people follow you?
You can follow me. Oh my God, I almost forget to mention something. Before you follow me, if you want to know what Thelma Hopkins is doing, there's a show she's in called Clean Slate. I don't know what platform it's streaming on, but I watched the first episode on an illegal platform. So I can tell you this, it is very good. Thelma Hopkins is a side character, but imagine Rachel down south. It's so good. And the main character is Laverne Cox. And it's got a bunch of other Black actors in it. If you're interested, Clean Slate is what it's called. It's very good.
I love it.
It's good. I loved it. Oh my God. And to follow me, TikTok, YouTube, and Red Note are going to be the 3 that I'm going to push today. You can follow me on those apps. All the fun is there. Thank you all who have been signing up and enjoying my videos because we're going to take down the presidency with comedy.
Okay. I love that. At AJ Vandertunt for all of them?
At all of them, AJ Vandertunt.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Oh, yes. And to that point about the Thelma Hopkins show, I'm loving Family Matters cast members and the current projects that they're in. I love that we're shouting them out and supporting them. So shout out to Thelma Hopkins, and the show is called Clean Slate.
Clean slate. Clean slate.
Again, congratulations to Jo Marie Payton. I know we've made a lot of fun about Tyler Perry, but nonetheless, Jo Marie Payton, our favorite TV mother, she is working.
I'm going to watch it, y'all. I am going to watch it, and I'm going to talk so much crap about it if it's not good.
Boy. Now, I don't know. I mean, she could respond to my Instagram DM because I did, like, since she hearted our story where we were like, hey, congrats on the Tyler Perry role. I figured like I would reach out and be like, hey, come on the podcast. We'd love to have you on. It would be great. So if she responds to that, then we'll try to make her feel good about the choices she's made.
If you respond, Jo Marie Payton, I am happy. Just know I am going to ask you about Tyler Perry. These will be questions that I'm going to ask.
Yeah. Oh, God. And she seems like she would be honest. So I would take her at her word. So, Jo Marie, shout out to you. I know Jaleel White has a game show on the Game Show Network and might be doing some other stuff. Darius, what's the project that Darius is in right now?
Greenwood is the name of the movie. It is the Fossum Network, I think is who produced it, but I don't know if they have an app, y'all. Honestly, just Google it and you'll find the movie, but it's Greenwood, and trigger warning, it is about the Tulsa Massacre. So if you do not like that kind of stuff, it may not be your cup of tea, but it seems like a really good movie from what I saw in the trailer.
All right. Nice. Family Matters cast members, congratulations on all your current stuff that you're involved in. It is very easy for these stars to be stuck in the 90s and not have anything going on with them nowadays, but we love to see you guys all still working and still finding stuff to do. So that's great. All right. Anyway, you want to sign us off with some deliciousness ringing?
You know, I am never going to try root beer float, but if it is good, y'all, tell me. And if there's a vegan option, I will try that deliciousness and let it ring.